Hello and welcome back to Born to Rant. I'm Brandon, and this week we are diving deep into one of the most forgotten science fiction gems of the last several decades. The movie that more or less killed animation kings Don Bluth and Gary Goldman's careers, and the rare case where you'll hear me complain about a movie not being long enough to tell its story. That's right, today we are diving deep into 2000's Titan A.E., directed by Bluth and Goldman, and starring Matt Damon, Drew Barrymore, Bill Pullman, Nathan Lane, and Jeanine Garofulo. We'll be taking a look at the movie's live-action origins, how it all went wrong, why the movie is still worth watching, and its legacy over 25 years later. Now, I very much remember this movie coming out because of its excellent trailers, specifically Pullman's line,
"You can't beat the dredge. They're pure energy."
And I don't know if anyone else's parents were like this, but anytime a new movie came out that was compared in any way, shape, or form to Star Wars, my mom would instantly be interested in seeing it. She didn't even like Star Wars that much, but she did run a daycare, so I think she was just looking for movies that would keep us quiet for a couple of hours at a time. But I digress. Titan A.E. was a movie we owned on VHS, but it also came out right at the tail end of the VHS boom and right as DVDs were becoming more of a thing. So once my family had made the switch from VHS to DVD, I kind of forgot about this movie. I've revisited the movie a few times over the years, but it's been well over 10 years since I last watched it. And when I put the movie on, I was kind of surprised by how dark it is. Now, Don Bluth making dark animated films is nothing new. I feel like all of his movies feature moments of shocking brutality. I mean, the man did make an entire movie about a dog dying. The other thing that struck me was how much I felt like Titan A.E. is primed for a live-action remake. Don't get me wrong, the animation found here is absolutely stunning and a really excellent combination of both 3D and traditional 2D animation working together to create a really unique looking movie, but the world that movie creates and the characters that inhabit that world are so interesting and so much fun that I just want to hang out with them more. And that was the thing that really jumped out to me as not working. The movie just moves too fast for its own good. We never get the chance to just hang out with these characters and enjoy their personalities. And they do all have interesting and fun personalities that I want to hang out with. Like if this movie was maybe just 10 to 15 minutes longer and focused on the characters, it could have been something really special. And imagine my surprise when I found myself thinking about Firefly while watching this movie, only to realize that Joss Whedon is one of the 3 credited screenwriters. But before I start diving too deep into what I enjoyed rewatching Titan A.E., let's take just a step back and learn a little bit more about how this movie came to be. And it all begins with Hans Bauer and Randall McCormick, who developed the initial story in the early to mid 1990s, and originally this was set up to be a live-action movie at Fox. However, after the story was turned into the studio, they realized how expensive/impossible it would be to make a movie of this scale live action. So they decided to convert it into an animated project, and Art Vitello was hired to direct. At that point, the script was turned over to Ben Edlund, who completed the first proper draft of the screenplay, and then John August would jump on board to do a quick polish of the dialogue. By the summer of 1998, the head of Fox fired Vitello, disappointed with his lack of progress, and handed the script to Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, who obviously had done some big projects at this point, like The Secret of Nim, The Land Before Time, An American Tail, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and they had just finished up Anastasia for Fox, which had been a fairly successful hit at the box office. And anyway, the head of Fox basically told them that Titan A.E. was their next project, or he would be forced to lay off a large majority of the animation staff working at Fox Animation Studios, something he would end up doing anyway. And even though the 2 directors had almost no experience working with science fiction, they agreed to take on the movie, seeing it as a way to challenge themselves to create an epic animated movie that felt nothing like a Disney movie. Plus, saving their staff's jobs was probably important to them as well. And because the 2 wanted Titan to not feel like a Disney movie and instead something that would appeal to teenagers and young adults just as much as it would appeal to younger children. So the decision was made to bring on Joss Whedon to polish the screenplay and add a bit more grit to it. And at this point in his career, Whedon was already a big name, having helmed the screenplay for Toy Story and was the showrunner for both Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he was working on getting its spin-off Angel launched as well. He was also apparently being casually sexually cruel to his staff and trying to make his female employees cry, but that's a story for a different video. Now, at this point in its pre-production, Fox had already spent over $30 million developing the project, so there was a good amount of work already done on the movie. But once Bluth and Goldman officially signed on to direct, they were given a budget of $55 million and told they had just 19 months to finish the movie. Luckily for them, the casting had actually all been taken care of back in the fall of 1997. Matt Damon was cast off the success of Good Will Hunting, Barrymore was hot thanks to Scream, Nathan Lane had already even been Timon in The Lion King, and Bill Pullman had also just faced off against a bunch of aliens in Independence Day just a couple of years earlier, so this was a hot voice cast to say the least. And Titan A.E. is obviously a very different movie for Bluth and Goldman. Not only is it science fiction, but this is also the first time the directors were working with 3D animation. And while not all of Titan A.E. is 3D animated, almost all of the backgrounds are. And this was done to make the movie feel a little more futuristic, but also so that it would be easier for the camera to move through the spaces. One of my favorite pieces of production trivia I found when doing research for this movie is that the animators enacted several of the scenes using hand-built props, all before the movements were captured for the movie. And finally, on June 16th, 2000, Titan A.E. was released into theaters, and on its opening weekend, it would place 5th at the box office. It would also only make $9.3 million against its $85 million budget, and would end its box office run with a worldwide total of just $35.7 million, making it a massive disappointment for the studio and everyone involved. Apologies for the interruption, but before we go any further, I wanted to jump in and say Born to Rant is a completely independent channel, and I use absolutely no AI in the making of my videos. If that means anything to you at all, it would mean the world if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's also a link to my Patreon in the description below if you feel so inclined to join. And with all of that out of the way, I think it's time for us to dive deep into Titan A.E. and everything that makes it still worth watching today.
They came in my kitchen and they bullseye! Ugh.
Let's just say it up front. Titan A.E. is a fairly standard hero's journey tale, and it's pretty obvious that Star Wars was the main inspiration for the world it created. I mean, Corso is basically Han Solo, and the Titan itself kind of feels like a reverse Death Star, right? Instead of destroying planets, it creates them, and instead of our heroes destroying it at the end of the movie, they have to channel the bad guy's energy directly into the Titan to get it to work. But if we're talking about what makes this movie special and what makes it stand out, it's obviously the beautiful animation. Both the 2D and 3D animated portions of this movie look absolutely beautiful. The opening sequence alone is stunning. From the look of the water to the race to get to the ships and Kale's tearful goodbye with his dad, all of it just works and does an excellent job of setting up the story and adventure that we're about to go on. Also, real quick, why does little boy Kale kinda look like Cody from Rescuers Down Under? But honestly, every single set piece of this movie looks really incredible and is a lot of fun to hang out in. The salvage yard where Kale and Tech work, grungy and gross and awesome. Plus, how sick are these little space jet skis they're flying around on? And he even gets this sick laser chainsaw. Are you kidding me? But the salvage yard sequence is really fun. We get Kale and Akima's meet cute, Kale saying one of my favorite lines in the movie.
I'll tell you something about your famous future. Every day I wake up, it's still the present. I don't think this future thing exists.
Corso saving Kale, and then of course the Dredge showing up and causing complete mayhem. And let's talk about the Dredge real quick. I really like that they look like walking energy swords from the Halo series. Seriously, I've never seen another creature design quite like this. And speaking of the creature designs, there are so many fun species in this movie, and it's really a bummer that we don't get to know more about any of them. Now, once we're on board the Valkyrie, we're introduced to the entire crew. Barrymore's Akima, Lane's Preed, Garofalo Stith, John Leguizamo as Goon, and of course, Bill Pullman as Captain Corso. And I actually really like the introduction to the crew. This is one of those scenes that I genuinely think could have been a couple minutes longer, just to allow these characters to mingle and form some attachments, but instead we're whisked off to the next planet to meet with the Gowl. I really love the Gowl. I love their design, I love that they don't speak, and I love how they try and help our heroes escape. This is also another classic hero's journey moment where we've received the call to adventure, and now we're falling further into the world and getting the clues on where to go next. And this chase sequence with the Dread is still absolutely thrilling and beautiful to look at today. And the chase of course ends with Akima and Kale being taken in by the dredge, and this leads to two completely different but equally fun prison breaks. And if you've been watching this channel for a while, you may know that I love a good prison break. And Akima's prison break sequence, I mean, it's awesome. First of all, I love how bad Preed and Corso mess up trying to break into the prison.
He's not a slave and you're not traitors. But he doesn't carry himself like a slave. Look at the way he stands.
But more than that, I love that when they do find Akima, she's taking a nap surrounded by all the aliens she's concussed. Akima is a badass. As for Kale, his prison break is interesting, with him using the electricity from his ring to create a disturbance in this electrical field prison thing. At least I think that's what's happening, but I'm an idiot, so if anyone actually knows how he's breaking out, let me know in the comments. And I love how he steals a ship to get out of there. Honestly, I wonder if the Force Awakens team was thinking about this scene at all when they did the scene of Poe and Finn stealing a ship to escape the First Order. But once our team is back together, we do get a little bit of hangout time with everyone, but again, not as much as I'd like. We also get this weird little scene between Kale and Corso, set to the urges "It's my turn to fly." Actually, this is another minor problem that I have with the movie, the soundtrack. Not the score. I think Graham Revell's score is pretty solid. But what I don't like is the modern rock soundtrack used for the needle drops throughout this movie. And I'm not opposed to hearing guitars in a space opera. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy proved that it can be done. But the tracks found in Titan A.E. just do not gel the same way. I mean, this soundtrack has songs from Lit, Power Man 5000, and Jamiroquai. It's all over the place style-wise. And even though they weren't a band yet, you know who I think could have had some killer tracks on the soundtrack? Coheed and Cambria. I mean, is there any other band on the planet better at writing songs about war and outer space?
I don't think so.
So after Corso and Kale have had their bonding moment, it's pretty quickly revealed that Corso and Preed are in league with the Dredge and trying to sell both Kale and the Titan's location to them. And let's talk about this turn a little bit, because I understand why it needs to be there. We needed someone to betray the trust of the crew, and Preed seems like the obvious choice. This is even doubled down on in the finale, but Corso's turn doesn't quite make sense to me. He just never has any sort of bitterness to his character before this reveal. Now, you could argue that he's being too good of a mentor to Kale, and that's our clue, but I don't know. When watching this movie again, his betrayal really jumped out at me as not working, especially because it's mostly all undone in the finale anyway. It's also very weird to me that Corso and Preed would be the only two members of the crew clued in on this betrayal, especially after Kale and Akima escape and Stith and Goon are left just kind of confused by the entire situation. So anyway, after Kale and Akima escape, we get the most direct Star Wars reference in the entire movie.
Should I get out of the bush?
And we move into the finale, which is just kind of brilliant from start to finish. I think the ice rings still look absolutely amazing and pop off the screen. And then once we're on the Titan itself, we get this great taped message from Kale's dad, Corso and Preed showing up, and Preed betraying Corso, which leads to Corso snapping his neck, something that's absolutely still shocking to see in an animated movie like this. And like I said earlier, the whole finale kind of plays like a reversal of the Death Star destruction from A New Hope. Our hero has to go off on his own and use his skills to save the day. He's even saved by Corso at the last second, just like Han shows up to save the day. And of course, our heroes take out the bad guys, harness their energy, and create a new planet called
Bob.
Bob?
You don't like Bob?
So over 25 years later, what is the legacy of Titan A.E? Well, I think it exists in a really interesting spot alongside two other animated sci-fi films, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, aka Animated Stargate, and Treasure Planet. And ironically enough, both of those movies were made by Disney, and both were also giant flops, and together the three feel like a trilogy of lost potential. Although I do think that both Atlantis and Treasure Planet have gone on to have more of a cult following than Titan A.E currently has, but that's neither here nor there. As far as Don Bluth and Gary Goldman are concerned, sadly, Titan A.E would put a real stop to both of their directing careers. In fact, since this movie came out, neither of them have directed a movie since. It's also widely regarded as the movie that killed Fox Animation Studios, but let's be real, they were already dying anyway. For me, the big legacy of Titan A.E. is that it's this incredible world, and even though it's a fairly standard hero's journey, it's a fun journey all the same. Like I said, my biggest complaint with this movie is that it doesn't take its time to let us enjoy the world. We're just sort of rushed from major set piece to major set piece. But let me know in the comments, what do you think of Titan A.E.? Where does it rank for you among animated sci-fi movies? Would you like to see a live action version of this movie? If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching, and as always, a very special thank you to my supporters over on Patreon. You all help keep this channel running week after week. There's a link to the Patreon in the description below if you'd like to learn more. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps independent channels like me out more than you know. And that's gonna do it for Born to Rant this week. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.